Are you croaky or are you just like shouting into your mic?
No, it's my new sexy voice that I'm employing for podcast recordings on Tuesdays.
It's your podcast voice.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I was told by my partner that I need to actually keep her awake. So yeah, I know she gets quite bored of my voice.
Differently.
Yeah.
Many different ways to do that.
Nothing like that. It's a PG show. It's Tuesday morning, you weirdo.
You said it.
Moving swiftly on. Moments of the weekend. Rach, go for it.
I've got two.
Go on.
The first one is Tandberg's goal.
Yeah.
And we were going to mention the fact that Everton had their first game at Goodison Park, which was super, but I'm sorry, the best part of that day was her goal.
Yeah.
Absolute ridiculous worldy, the audacity to shoot from there.
The
audacity. But also the quick thinking, because it was it was Bethany England's pressure. The ball just popped out. Like there was so little time to think, and she got not only the accuracy but the power. Perfect shot, just high enough to keep it out of Courtney Brosnan's kind of chasing hands. And I just thought, what a goal. Unbelievable goal. My second one, it's just
I didn't give you permission to do two.
You did, because I said I was doing two and you said, okay, go ahead. Roll the tapes back, Finn,
I say
please.
that?
She did.
That's crazy.
The second one is just something I noticed at West Ham Arsenal. It's a setup which is, and the reason I noticed it is because West Ham had to kick off numerous times from the centre circle, conceding so many goals, is that it reminded me a bit of rugby. They justify themselves to the right. Everyone seems to all line up on the line and set in the right side of the pitch, which then forces Arsenal, everyone over to the left. And obviously the goal is to send the ball long and try and win possession back deep in Arsenal's half. But it just made me, I was expecting someone to lift Katie McCabe, much like they do in the rugby. Do you know, that kind of way? I was like...
It's hoisted by the shorts.
Yeah, I'm just expecting that because it just seemed so... I was one side of the pitch, I was like, where the fuck is everybody? Oh, they're all over there. Everyone's over there. It was just a really funny, like, obvious thing they were doing. And it just made me think, why is nobody lifting McCabe? It's one way of getting the ball.
100%. I think she should be lifted most matches, to be honest. She's a fan favourite, a big hero. I think there's a lot of people who would line up to do that, to be fair. That should be one of the Arsenal experiences that you can get after the games as part of your lucky ballot. You get to lift McCabe. There we go.
We've got McCabe, literally.
Okay, in terms of my moment of the weekend, I thought this weekend was quite a tasty one for goal of the month contenders.
Yeah.
Like you said there, I would go with the Jade Riviera goal.
Oh.
I thought that was an absolute screamer.
Audacious as well.
Absolute screamer. Like solo effort, slams it home. Thought she was kind of going across. She was going to cut the ball back and then just goes for it. She was like,
she like put a toe through it.
Yeah. I was like, fair play to you. I'd love to see what the ball speed of that was, because it hit the net with such a force. I thought it was going to go through and hit the majority of the Manchester United fans. It was crazy. Like the atmosphere at Hayes Lane as well. I know we're going to talk about this game in a second, but my God, I used to play at Hayes Lane. We used to get... Why are you smirking?
Because I know where this is going.
You used to get one man and his dog, and it was my dad.
And girls in the ball.
And girls in the ball, yeah. You used to have about 4 people down there who were only there literally for beers because it was one of the closest pubs in the area. But to see it rammed like that, I was like, I didn't even understand how Hayes Lane could look.
Yeah, do you know it was a shame?
Full of fans.
Because obviously they're doing up the one side of the stadium. It was a shame then that the gantry was... That's on the opposite side, because it was just shooting an empty stadium, and actually the rest of the ground was pretty jam-packed. Yeah,
absolutely loaded. What I'd give to be playing in a stadium like my first season with Palace,
come on.
It's a good base. It's a good
ground,
base. Yeah. My first season with Palace was during the COVID era, and you couldn't have fans at games. So
you had an excuse.
The second season, we had one man and his dog. The first season, there was no one. It was just staff. Do you remember when they used to play the fan noises as well through the FA player?
So
and it was just like, way, and you just have that we didn't even have that. Anyway.
Oh, no.
Moving swiftly on, let's get stuck into Manchester United, cruising to a storming 5-1 win away at London City Lionesses at Hayes Lane. Former Man United player Nikita Paris pulled back a consolation goal, her first for London City.
Their first home goal.
Gorgeous.
First goal in, in play.
Yeah, in open play,
yeah.
Which is really lovely. That's and especially against a top team as well, her former team. Man United are now top of the league. They've scored 9 in their opening 2 games and have conceded only once. Obviously, what I don't want to do is obviously have the podcast be a running commentary of London City Lionesses' first season in the WSL. Obviously, there's been so much narrative around what they're going to achieve. Obviously, the big transfer window. Michelle Kang generates her own noise and interest anyway. But also the fact that it's an independent club and no one really knows how it's all going to gel together and work. Everyone finds it fascinating week to week. So let's get stuck into London City Lionesses.
Let's.
Obviously, it's been a bit of a tough start. It's been a baptism of fire. Currently sitting bottom of the table with a -7 goal difference. But they have had a really difficult first couple of games.
Yeah.
It's not been easy. They have, I think, still put in quite a good account of themselves.
The signs are there, and I remember saying this a couple of times, maybe not that often about Crystal Palace, but there were times where they were in games and you felt they don't look out of place. And I think you could say the same for London City Lionesses. I think the concern would be how they've conceded goals in quick succession.
For sure.
In both games, how they conceded so quickly after half-time against Manchester United. They're the little things where you're like, we should be able to deal with that. We've enough experience in this squad to be able to not switch off in key moments and not kind of fall foul to those kind of almost tropes of the teams that are coming up and when they concede.
For sure.
So I think there'll be areas that they'll want to look to tighten up, because you look at the Arsenal result, 2 goals very quickly. It could have been a different scoreline. You think 2-1 wouldn't have looked so bad.
For
or,
sure.
Maybe 3-1 against United wouldn't have looked so bad. But actually, those very quick goals to be conceding, they need to, nip that in the bud quickly. I do think, again, up against a Manchester United who probably frustrated and I think needed a nice, comfortable, win, a good scoreline to kind of get their confidence back a little bit. And I think that was important for them. I think the depth that they faced, United have up front, I think they've got a real depth. Because I saw the lineup and I thought, ooh, resting Turner, that's interesting. They must have one eye on the Champions League fixture, But sure, Melvin Mallard is on absolute fire at the moment.
What I was going to say, I think London City also have suffered from a little bit of a lack of luck.
Oh my God, they should have scored.
My God.
2 or 3.
100%. And fair play to Fallon Tallis-Joyce. I think in the first 20 minutes, there was a couple of goal line kind of scrappy clearances
but if you
or
keep
just
the ball-
directly at her.
That's what I was going to say.
And I think that's the kind of, I don't know, they're still getting those chances. They're creating goal-scoring moments, but it's just not quite, it's that last final little bit. So there was moments of Christ, they could really get themselves back into
Which is a
this.
positive thing to look at. It was, 1-0, maybe 2-0 at the time. And, they were creating, there was a lot of action in the first half in United's box for London City. And
100%.
they were getting set pieces, they were getting
I think that was
crosses.
it. The threateningness from the set pieces, I think, was one of the things that I was thinking a lot of the WSL clubs need to pick up on the fact that they are creating a lot of chances through balls being whipped in, through those corners, through the deep kick off, free kicks.
Right, I
Christ,
thought you
I
were
used to
talking
play.
I thought you were talking about long goalkeeper kicks. I was like, where's she going with this?
But I also do think they were quite unlucky in terms of the first goal. I'm not entirely convinced that was a penalty.
Complete opposite end to me.
I'm not. I've watched that a couple of times. I think the ref thought it was a push in the back. I don't think it looked quite light. They were both shoulder to shoulder, and I think that was not a nail in the coffin, but I think it created
3 minutes.
It's a lot to kind of come
Sucker
back
punch.
from in that. Yeah, it's conceding within 2 minutes is pretty crazy. And then obviously you got the Riviera solo effort in the 32nd minute, I think.
It was unreal.
But I do think there were moments in the game where Manchester United just picked them apart in the middle of the field. It felt like there was this kind of ticky-tacky football, and London City Lionesses were just struggling to play catch up. But I do think some very promising moments there. But at the same time, let's
baptism
give them
of fire, I think, but equally understanding who they're up against. And, I think that is important context. They've had a difficult first couple of games. They play Everton next, but then I think they face City maybe. So at least they're getting them out of the way early doors. And then ideally, you tell me when you're playing against top teams, it kind of forces you to improve quickly, right? And it forces you to make decisions quicker, which will only benefit them as they go on and start playing teams, further down the table. They should be a bit sharper and potentially start actually putting those balls in the back of the net and maybe coming away with points.
I think the difference with London City Lionesses is that they are largely made up of a squad of WSL or elite players, whereas in the teams that have come up from promotion, you still have those players who have only been championship players who are still learning the ropes, who are still learning the pace of the game has quickened, still getting to know the sort of styles and profiles of the players in the WSL. So I think they do have a little bit of an advantage, but they still all haven't played together. But
I was going to say, they're brand new.
We will see. But let's change tack a little bit. Let's talk about Man United, because obviously 2 WSL performances so far. Really, really strong start for them in the league. However, Champions League, different story. Last Thursday, having dominated the first leg of their third round qualifying game in Bergen against SK Brann, they lost 1-0 after conceding in the 76th minute. Obviously, they had loads of chances to put that game to bed, and by all accounts, a fairly dominant performance from them. They're going to come away from that super disappointed.
Yeah, and you have to put in that this was a big game for Brann. They had a record crowd there. Then, of course, United had the disruption of the boot debacle, and I feel like if that perhaps had been noticed a little bit earlier, it may not have. And they're not using the boots as an excuse. They can't really. Although I do wonder if it was the shooting boots they left on the plane. But they'll be frustrated that they weren't able to put a game like that to bed. I think the main thing is it is one goal. And I think going back to LSV, having come off the back of scoring 9 goals in the league is exactly the kind of thing you want, like that you need to know that your forwards are on fire and that they're, even your defenders are bloody scoring. So that will be a big boost for them. I think we touched on that back last season. I think maybe it was Arsenal, of course, who were struggling in the Champions League at the time, and they had that moment where they had an in-between WSL game in between fixtures, and I remember thinking you need a game where you score lots of goals. I think they did that. It was when they played perhaps it was Real Madrid maybe, and they had a game in the middle where I think they probably scored about 4 goals, as they so love to do at the Emirates. And I think a similar thing for Manchester United is they'll draw on that performance, they'll draw on that firepower, and they've got the fact that both Turland and Malahard are playing so well, so that'll be key. My concern for them is defensive depth, and I'm worried about Millie Turner. It looked like a pretty significant injury, so that's an area that, should they progress into the group stages of the Champions League, would be a concern in terms of managing to sustain good performances week in, week out, playing 3 games in a week multiple times throughout the first part of the season. Managing that with the depth in the squad is might be tricky, but they won't be looking at that now.
I think the pressure's definitely on. This is a Manchester United squad. You spend so much time and effort in the season before getting that spot, getting one of those 3 elusive places in the Champions League and playing European football. There's so many incredible players in Manchester United who will want to go far in the competition. Coming out at this stage and not really getting to grips with the competition in the latter stages, it will just be so disappointing. But when you look at I know we talked about Manchester United and how much of a fucking shit show they are behind the scenes. There's context to that, but it just feels like it'd still be a disappointment if they don't progress.
It would be disappointing. They should win this game. I think the expectation is they should win this game. I think there's a nice collectiveness in that team, and they really fight for each other.
They have each other's backs.
Yeah, and I think they'll draw on that. They'll be going into that game absolutely gunning to get the victory. They're at home. They'll more than likely have a pretty good noisy crowd at LSV as well. So, while the pressure is on them, I think they'll draw on the confidence of their WSL games, because realistically you should be using that momentum in those moments. And it's something Skinner loves to talk about as experience and key moments and all that kind of thing. So the fact that their most recent experience is scoring lots of goals, they really have to draw on that.
Well, they now need to win the return game in Manchester, as you said, on Thursday by at least 2 goals to go through to the league phase of the competition.
What's difficult now is they've got Brann coming up, but then they know on the horizon is Arsenal. And it's don't think about Arsenal, just think about Brann. And that's a new thing for their coaching staff to have to deal with, is just the single game focus, which can always be tricky, because in the back of their minds, the staff's minds, they're like, how do we manage the squad? How do we make sure we're in the best position to win these games that are coming up without the players feeling like we're thinking too far in the future? So it's an interesting experience for them to go through this season, and should they get through against Brann, they'll have a whole load of new things to have to experience once they get into the group stages.
Well, one of the things I would say is that the staff's priority should definitely be finding the boots.
Yeah,
I would say.
I think
in terms of preparation and kind of going into this game, I've heard that boots can be quite key. Just to explain a little bit about what happened, if you haven't already seen the absolute shit show in the papers this week, 15 pairs of boots and 20 pairs of shin guards were lost en route to the game. I'm not making this up. This is not April Fool's. And at the time of recording, have still not been found. The missing boots weren't noticed until the day of the game, because Man United had trained at Carrington before travelling to Norway. Less than 3 hours before kickoff, club staff had to go to Torshov Sport, a shop in Bergen, to spend $4,000 on replacement boots and shin guards. The best thing about this story is Oliver Bonn, who was working at the shop at the time, said, "We are one of the biggest sports shops in the city, but still not used to delivering 15 pairs of elite boots at the same time. Some of them had to go up half a size, but I think they're okay with it. It was between that or not playing. The owner Andrew Gullord added, maybe we should have told them we only had boots with no studs to help the local team. Camaraderie at its finest.
I love the fact that they came out to speak to the media about it. I just find like
That's great journalism.
Yeah, I've worked in a running shop before, and the idea of having like more than 3 pairs of the same size, maybe they are the biggest shop in Bergen, so perhaps they have a very high amount of people buying football boots. I don't know, but this idea that you'd have more than say 3 or 4 pairs of a shoe in the same size is so unlikely, and I imagine a lot of the players probably have similar size feet.
Does anyone have a picture of the boots they used? Like what boots were they?
Why am I imagining like clogs or big canal boats with like socks stuffed down the front? Do you know what I mean? Imagine having, not only have we lost your boots, the boots we've gotten you are the wrong size. Good luck.
Also,
who do you decide to give the boots to? Who do you prioritise? Do you make sure like your strikers have boots that fit, or?
But it's almost Sunday league to like come off. Like say you want to start in 11, you've come off, then you've got to like take your boots off and give it to the next player coming on. It's like a tag team. Like it's just the ridiculousness of
who else
that.
is a size 5?
But you can only sub like for like, because there's no point subbing a 6 for a 4, is there? So the whole situation is absolute madness. And 4K, I mean, Man United by all accounts are struggling for finances, so they're going to have to sell someone now in the January transfer window to replace the money spent on boots and shin guards. That's just also a thought about that, and also the commercial conflict that it poses for players who do have boot deals. Them having to play in Norwegian clogs, not ideal.
What I enjoyed was
I'm raising the big points here, obviously.
The way they were basically like, and the club agreed that we could replace the boots, and I was like, of course what do you mean they agreed? Of course they have to give them friggin' boots. You've lost the boots.
Flip-flops.
You're not getting a well done for doing that. Like that's the absolute. No, I'm sorry. You've got a maximum spend of £500 on the club credit card. You can only buy 3 boots, and like that's it. Like
I am foreshadowing a Nike advert in which they do something funny around replacing the boots. Just saying, it's an Addy club.
It's there for you, Nike.
Nike.
Get in
it's
there.
an open door.
It
Just
is.
give
Do you know what?
Creative.
Just do it.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry, we have to high five that one. Sometimes we make really good jokes that are for the joke journal, right? And we have to high five.
Get back to the serious stuff, though. Coming up after this, Sam Kerr returns. She's back. She's absolutely back. You think that she would have new parent sleepiness, bags under her eyes, a little bit tired from pushing the pram around, dealing with new parent duties, midnight nappy changes. Not Sam Kerr. Not Sam Kerr.
We can multitask, us women.
You're joking.
We can be top footballers and mothers.
That's crazy. We've only just got out of the kitchen. That's unbelievable from us. Marked her long-awaited Chelsea return with a goal as the Blues beat Aston Villa 3-1 at Villa Park. I mean...
That was a right, like the writing was on the wall. Do you know that kind of way? I still think, and after our conversation last week, I actually think, Chloe, it's probably down to us, because what we did last week was we took the pressure off Sam Kerr. And we said, you know what, we don't need to pile the pressure on her. We know she's an absolute, like, unbelievable goal scorer.
An icon.
But you can take your time, gal. Like, Chelsea have got this covered if you don't immediately come back and start banging in the goals. But sure, fuck it, who doesn't love competition? She's set the bar. She saw what everyone else is doing and gone, I'll have some of that.
She saw Aggie Beever-Jones. She saw Alyssa Thompson coming in. These 2 youngsters nipping at people's heels. And she was like, it has been 637 days since I last played. I haven't played under Sonia. I don't know who's in the squad anymore.
Half the squad,
I'm a little bit tired because of, child mum life. Hold my fucking baby bottle. Here she comes. She came on... was it 75th minute, bringing with her like the experience, the expertise, the passion, the dedication, the everything that fans wanted to see. I mean, Rach, what was it like hearing the roar of fans go absolutely mental for her as she came on the pitch, first off, before we even get stuck into her performance?
It's one of those moments where you see comments from people. I think someone commented on our Instagram going, as an Aston Villa fan, I could have done without her scoring against us, but equally, to see her back on the pitch is brilliant. And it's one of those like transcends clubs when players like that after a tough injury journey get back. People are delighted to see it. I think less delighted to see her when she comes up against your side. But I also think what's really important, and it's something I think I've noticed across a number of teams so far this season, is shaking off that first goal. Mm-hmm. Like you're seeing it with some players. You look at maybe a Bunny Shaw who managed to do it this weekend. Miedema, she just needs one to kind of shake off that first goal back after injury in the league. I appreciate they've probably scored they have scored in pre-season. But Sam Kerr, like, I think we maybe underestimate how much of an impact that will have for her to get the first goal out of the way immediately. She doesn't need to think about that anymore. She doesn't need to think. One. Yeah, she doesn't need to think, oh God, I have to come on now and like, not only do I need to make a difference, but there's so many other players in that position that can score goals and like I'm expected to score goals. Gone. She doesn't need to think about that at all. She's got the first goal back, and I just think that's massive kind of for her mentally to just go, yeah, still got it. And it was her 100th goal for Chelsea. Like, the narrative, the storyline, like you read that in a book and be like, as if that would happen in real life. Do you know that kind of way?
Do you know what? I'd be absolutely raging if I was Alyssa Thompson. I'd be thinking,
this was my moment.
This was my headline. This was my headline this weekend.
Yeah.
I am one of the most expensive players in the WSL. I'm making my debut. This weekend's about me.
Yeah.
It's mine, actually. Sam Kerr comes along and says, absolutely bloody no chance. I would be low-key a little bit raging. And I think not just the goal, though, it was the immediate impact that she had as soon as she entered the field. I mean, she could have had pretty much 2 assists,
so funny.
I'd say.
The comms were giving her such shit for not taking an opportunity where she was in front of goal.
That's savage.
And instead she sent it back to Aggie Beaver-Jones. I'm like, give her a minute. Like, this is like her first touch. Sorry her hips aren't like quite immediately opening up to take that shot straight away. Like, it's been 637 days.
How unselfish is that?
Yeah, love that from her.
Yeah, I really, really rate that. And I think, there was that Macario effort on goal saved by Roebuck. Then you had the driven ball in, the crossbar strike from Cuthbert. 2 almost goals there that were kind of set up by things that Sam Kerr had done in the lead up to those.
But also for her, she'd go, do you know what? I'm going to give it to the player who scores in 74% of her games than me, who's not been back for 600 odd days. And I respect that trust. But then equally, she won't care what kind of goal it was. It was scrappy. It was sloppy. It was a goal. That's all that matters.
It wasn't the sexiest goal.
Instincts
but
were
it
still
doesn't
there.
matter.
Yeah.
It was a goal. It was an impactful goal as well. Because it is her 100th goal for the club. She is now 16 behind Fran Kirby's record as all-time club scorer.
It's funny because obviously she was on 99 goals for 637 days or something. Do you know what I mean? I think it was 634 when you include her last game, because I think 637 was WSL. But sitting on 99 goals, and I remember asking Miedema about scoring her 100th goal in the Euros, and she was like, well, I've been sat on 99 for the last 3 years, like having been injured for so long. We all knew it was coming. We all knew it was going to happen at some point. So for both of them to get it at key moments must be really nice, because your 100th goal is special. But imagine having it, your return from injury after that long. It's such a lovely kind of, I don't know, it's wholesome.
Well, she had some really beautiful words after the game. She said, it feels good. I'm really happy, but feel a lot of relief. Like, as you said, Rach, it's been a long journey and I'm glad it's over. It means everything to score a 100th goal for the club. When I signed for Chelsea, I never thought I would score 100 goals. That's crazy. Everyone else did. Sonia Bompasta said, and this is, I found this a little bit funny. She doesn't like being in front of everyone and getting the limelight, but she really deserves it. I was like, Sam, same person, same Aussie. Same big personality, backflips, punches, people who run onto the pitch, that kind of thing. That vibe.
Just to clarify, she did not punch someone who ran onto the pitch.
No, it was more of a clothesline, wasn't it, really?
It was a shoulder barge.
Which was deserved, because they did ruin the safety of everyone involved. So I back it. Don't come at me for that.
I don't back it.
I don't back assault. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Well, we had a really lovely question in from Shalvi on Instagram, who asked, will Sam Kerr's return draw larger crowds at Stamford Bridge in the future?
No. I don't think that comes from one player. I mean, Chelsea are an absolute star-studded, stacked squad, and it is Stamford Bridge. Filling that up is something that still needs work. It's not just going to work because of players. I'm not sure we're going to see some massive spike in attendance because of Sam.
I do think, though, Sam Kerr creating magic moments will draw crowds to Stamford Bridge. Like, I do look at kind of like we said this in the podcast, I think, previously, about the relationship that fans have with players as opposed to individual clubs. And I think Sam Kerr, she has such a loyal fan base. I do think it could encourage people to get back behind it. So do I think it's going to be largely different? Do I think we're going to see
have a few hundred extra
sell out Stamford Bridge all of a sudden for every single game? Absolutely not. But I do think there is a Sam Kerr contingent that will start to come back now.
I don't think we're going to see a marked increase just because of that, personally.
We'll wait and see.
Okay.
We will wait and see. Chelsea's opening goal was against the run of play, I feel.
Yes, it was.
Villa had so many chances. Do we think Villa will feel a little bit hard done by? Because
100%.
I think bloody yes. Goal at 22 minutes. Some really, really super good chances from Aston Villa, but just didn't feel like they could really convert. I mean, what were your thoughts on this? Because it kind of felt really frustrating, and it was amazing to see how much Aston Villa were actually taking the game to Chelsea and causing them problems, especially the Chelsea defence. At points, they looked a little bit lost.
All over the place. I think first half, Aston Villa were in control of the game. I thought they set up really well. I thought the three at the back worked very well for them. It allowed them to overlap on the wings. They were using the width so well. And Chelsea just really struggled with it. Numerous times, Ebony Salmon was sending balls out wide to Chastity Grant, and every time she was free, Kirsty Hansen was causing damage. They were cutting inside, splitting defence. I just thought the setup was really tactically very well executed to the point of creating opportunities. That kind of key decision making in key moments, that kind of hesitation at times, maybe taking an extra touch, is what killed Villa, because arguably they could have gone in 3 or 4-0 up. And I think they'll be absolutely raging, because that way of playing against a team like Chelsea with the depth like Chelsea is so hard to do across 90 minutes. And if you're not capitalising on those opportunities in the first half, you're going to have what happened to them, where second half they're starting to taper a little bit. Their substitutes arguably could help them continue the style to a degree, but Chelsea's substitutes allowed them to elevate their performance even further. And I think when you match those two things together, at Chelsea are going to get better and Aston Villa start to taper off. And you've got a team that are going to take their opportunities. Like Ike Beaver-Jones, as you said, scoring against the run of play. Great work from Kat Macario, but equally poor decision-making by Deslandis not to come out to meet her. It's those moments, those hesitations where, it's the turning point, I think, for these teams. I think Chelsea do what Chelsea do, capitalised on opportunities, saw the issues in the first half, changed it. Erin Cuthbert coming on made a massive difference. Alyssa Thompson made a massive difference. And then, of course, Sam Kerr, when she did come on, just that depth, that quality, and that decision-making in key moments is, absolutely what won them the game.
What I really loved about Aston Villa's performance is obviously they went down within the first 22 minutes. And I think there was a little bit of criticism that I did have about Ellie Roebuck and kind of like misjudging what happened, but it kind of felt like
there was a deflection.
It was a deflection like over the top of her, and Aggie Beaver-Jones obviously had the kind of fairly easy header into an open goal.
And there was criticism of Anna Patton for not picking up Aggie Beaver-Jones, but the problem was the flight of the ball was coming in a completely different direction, which Patton was coming to meet. Mm-hmm. Then it took the deflection, and suddenly the ball's in a completely different area. So I think the defensive issues was the not engaging with Macario higher up the pitch. That's where I think they lost it.
But I do think the main point for me and the takeaway from that first goal was the resilience that Aston Villa showed into like believing that they were going to get that equaliser. That's what I absolutely love seeing. I mean, and like you said, Rach, I think they were probably disadvantaged by taking too many touches. Lo and behold, you've got Emily Salmon, first time strike from a cutback, just knows exactly where the goal is, can kind of see that Hannah Hampton's probably a little bit out of position. Not much you can do about that, despite, but another great contender for goal of the month. And then you look at kind of like the Hansen effort just before half time, kind of picking up the ball, driving at them.
There was the defensive sloppiness. I think it was Nat Bjorn, hospital pass back. Mm-hmm. I think Ebony Salmon cut in with that. Again, maybe too many touches. There was an opportunity where Hannah Hampton came out of a goal really quickly and I think was higher up in her box because they were playing out from the back, which I thought Villa were doing a very good job of pressing. They were pressing as a unit and they were all committed to it. So it wasn't just one player or two players. They were committing together and I just think it was so impactful. Made Chelsea really think. But yeah, again, Hannah Hampton showing her quality that she was there quickly to close down other opportunities. So there are numerous moments, and I think what Ebony Salmon, I should say, needs to learn from that first goal is sometimes you just don't need to think, you just need to trust your instincts, and that's what happens when you do that. And I think maybe a little bit more of that throughout the game could have seen Aston Villa with a couple more goals in the first half.
I mean, the overarching thing from this is that it feels like a super positive result for Aston Villa. That it's a game where the result doesn't reflect like what actually happened in the game and how close that was for Chelsea.
That happens. We're seeing more of that. West Ham Arsenal doesn't feel like a 5-1. Like, I don't feel like Arsenal dominated 90 minutes. West Ham set up very, very well against them in the first half. Brighton, for example, against Manchester City, you look at the result and think, yeah, City won, that makes sense. Actually, Brighton played very, very well. So tactically, teams are definitely improving. Maybe not something we dig into enough because we talk about quality of players, but tactically the game is improving. We saw it at the Euros. I touched on this on my podcast, but like, we're seeing that understanding of how to set up against top quality teams. The next step is sustaining that for 90 minutes.
Well, it's very baffling for me that Aston Villa are currently sitting with just 1 point after the last couple of games. Like, it doesn't feel like that reflects where they are and the performances they've put in. We do have, obviously, the next 3 fixtures they've got: Liverpool home, Arsenal away, Leicester home as well. Really good opportunities there to kind of pick up points. Really excited, actually, for the Villa-Arsenal
Listen, last time they played, they battered them.
Yeah, I think that's the one that I'm most excited for out of those.
And I think what we're seeing from Arsenal is slow to start, slow to react to how a team is set up. And I think...
And Aston Villa are taking the game to teams.
Yeah, but if Aston Villa can capitalise on a slow start from Arsenal, for example, they could find themselves in a similar position where they're up early on. So they're all the things they're going to learn from each game. They're going to learn, and I think for Villa, who'd kind of found a rhythm at the end of the season, they needed to get a game under their belt to be like, oh yeah, we do know what we're doing. Right, we're fine. And you saw that. I think against Chelsea is just the next step is being clinical.
Oh, positive start for Villa. Let's see where they land after those next 3 fixtures. Coming up after this, we take a closer look at the WSL's international boom. The WSL is obviously at a very important juncture right now. Coming off the back of another Euros victory for the Lionesses, obviously the league is at the start of its biggest ever domestic TV rights agreement with Sky and the BBC. And in 2024, Barclays signed the biggest sponsorship deal in the history of women's football in the UK. Obviously, this is all being overseen by the WPLL, taking over from the FA. First time, obviously, the top 2 leagues being run by an independent company. We thought it might be, it's quite a nice opportunity, I think, to take stock of what the WPLL has done.
WSL football, please.
Oh, I can't. Well, I'm already having to get my head around WSL 2 for the championship,
honestly.
Right? And I'm done with the acronyms. I'm staying old school, and I'm
Sorry,
calling it what it is.
We're not calling you your actual name.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Basically that. But obviously it does feel like the WSL is thriving internationally right now. I've had a lot of conversations about, where the WSL sits in comparison to the NWSL. Has always been seen as a kind of bit of a rivalry between the 2 countries. Whose league is better commercially, talent, performances, the structure of the teams. Really lovely stats that the WSL League's global audience went from 26% of overall viewers in 2021-22 to 62% by the end of 23-24. What do we think is the key behind this? In fact, the WSL audience growing so much. There's been so much kind of talk around the impact of YouTube, putting the games on a channel where it's easily accessible. You have a great viewer journey. You don't have all the
sign in, click here,
and kind of the sign in issues with the FA player. You don't have all the kind of like, I don't know, dodgy interference of the FA player. The quality of the products, the quality of the viewing product is a lot higher. Obviously,
multicam.
This time you're going to have YouTube showing some of the WSL2 games and some of the WSL games that aren't already covered by BBC and Sky. So the platform is still there, but maybe used less than it was last year, but a good opportunity for the championship to get a lot more coverage.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a continuation of, high YouTube figures if games are all being put on at the same time and they're all being put on Sky, because with respect to Sky, and as great as the multi-view thing is, I suppose, I went and recorded games the other day, Liverpool, Leicester, brilliant, press record, went to watch it back. It was Chelsea, Aston Villa, which they had on another channel, because the only way to watch the game was to go into the multi-view setup and select the game. So you can't even go in and record the game I wanted to record. Then you have to wait until it comes out on YouTube to actually get to watch it back, because unlike BBC, you can't go in and watch it back in the same way. So, YouTube is still going to be a hugely important place for people to, not just outside of the UK, but within the UK, to see the games they haven't been able to watch, because all the games pretty much are now being played at 12 o'clock.
Well, I think the big part of YouTube, though, is also free. And I think what we're starting to see now is this kind of the paywall come in. Obviously, there's a paywall on Sky. There's obviously not a paywall on the BBC. You've got DAZN who kind of introduced the paywall for the Champions League games and then kind of retracted that and decided not to put them behind a paywall. But it could be imminent that they do that again at some point if it becomes, commercially viable to do that at some stage. We've then just this morning kind of received an announcement that Disney Plus is going to be showing the Champions League. Just the live draw, not the fixtures as far as we're aware. But it's another platform in which you do have a women's football product that is going to be put behind a paywall. Amazon are obviously making massive moves in the men's games, kind of put a paywall behind that. So it kind of feels like there is this like creeping of, which is good in a way because you want to commercialize the game and you want to make sure there's investment going into the game. But also we are still a growing audience and having multiple platforms where you're paying 35 quid for Now TV or, Sky, and then you're paying another 15 quid for an Amazon subscription and another 20 quid for a Disney Plus subscription just to access women's football. It might become too high a bar for where we are in terms of our women's football audience at the moment.
Yeah,
that's my concern.
It's finding the balance of when to make that switch because everything is decided on audience numbers and viewer numbers get scrutinized to the nth degree. And, there was an article about how viewership has dropped 35% or whatever on TV. And you're like, well, that's probably because more games are now behind a paywall. So, of course, you're going to have a drop in viewership, I would expect. There might be more games on TV technically, but if they're sat on iPlayer, which I guess you can access, but maybe not as easy as if you're watching TV, or if it's on behind a paywall, you're probably going to see a dip in numbers. Mm-hmm. That's why the YouTube access is so important. So it's that balance of growing that audience to a point where you feel you can get them to pay for things. And I think at the moment we're maybe doing that a bit early. We saw it with DAZN. I thought they did that way too early. And I think what annoyed people is not for so long, but they'd say they weren't going to do that. And then they did it. And then they undid it. And it doesn't look great. I think, look, it's great that so many games are getting the broadcast standard of production, which I think is what I'd argue is that should be the main focus at the moment from the WSL.
Oh, I'm going to miss all those rainy cam lenses and the
wiping.
When the ball comes too close to where the camera
and you go
is.
Down.
You go down, but you can't really see the edge of the pitch. That
great.
Kind of vibe. Yeah.
Feels a bit like you're on
really old school
on a boat. No, I don't think anybody's going to miss the FA Player or single cam games. But for me, I think they need to be a bit better at prioritizing what is expected from them. And there is a bit of an element of them trying to do everything, trying to talk to Gen Z, trying to do all cool, fun content, which I understand. But ultimately, what people are looking for from the WSL is getting games broadcast at top quality. That is their bread and butter. And that is the thing that needs to be focused on first and foremost. And for me, the rest comes after, once you've got that done, because, people not being able to access the first 15 minutes of the first game of the season, you're not going to be able to turn around and go, well, we did this great TikTok with some players, so why don't you watch that? This is what people come to you for, right? And I think sometimes clubs, federations, a little bit guilty of this too. They want to have all the best stuff for them, which I understand. But ultimately, if you're going to grow the game, you need stories and you need content to be shared by other people who have access to different audiences who maybe aren't warm and receptive to women's football already. And that's how you grow your audience. And I think for the WSL, you need to get your broadcast stuff, bread and butter, done, without the glitches, without, not being able to see some things, without things switching off or whatever it might be. That's what needs to be the focus rather than, and then you can do the other stuff, which I appreciate is important. But for me, the most important thing is you are offering people the game to watch and it needs to be easy to access and done well.
Well, just to add context to that, so the international broadcast deals for the WSL were announced on the 4th of September. The deals were facilitated in partnership with the global sports marketing agency IMG, who's been appointed the WSL Football's exclusive international media rights representative for its leagues in a new multi-year partnership. The announcement was widely well received, but what people were obviously very much a little bit alarmed about was the fact that the WSL's agreement with ESPN Plus wasn't announced until after the Chelsea versus Man City game. The Athletic's Ashley Polite recently did a really great piece about the WSL's growth in the US because we are already seeing the stats come out about how, quickly those audiences in the US are kind of translating into our audiences too. So North American audiences jumped 22% compared to the 23-24 season. Disappointing. It felt like a real kind of missed opportunity to get in there quickly and kind of prioritize one of the biggest audiences for for the WSL.
And I'm right in thinking they essentially just extended a deal that already existed.
Yes.
So
it was
again,
already in place.
Again, why did that take so long? That's where I'm a bit like, your bread and butter are your broadcast. That needs to be the main focus. For me anyway, you know, maybe they'll tell me different and that their content is just as important. And it is important, but, you know, ultimately the football should be the main focus. And, you know, to as well then mess up your first game, I think 15 minutes of it people couldn't view. Like, that's disappointing. And yeah, I just think getting the thing over the line the day before the season starts and then not announcing it, you know, I do think generally there was a bit of a lack of capitalizing on the Euros more proactively. I think it was very much a bit reactive, or a bit, you know, assuming we're going to see an impact from the Euros without kind of really throwing everything at it. And I think more could have been done around the build-up of the opening game, including outside of the UK. If the audience is so big internationally, how are you not getting that up and running?
The other side to that, if I'm going to try and play devil's advocate and maybe provide some kind of understanding of why it was done so late, is that yes, the WSL football have had a lot of things to deal with in terms of commercial rights. They've obviously made quite impressive moves in terms of raising the standards. We've seen a minimum salary cap come in. There's a lot of things that they've been doing. We've been in multiple meetings about the you know, the fixtures and the schedules and how difficult that all is. Yeah, they obviously have been doing a lot. They've been doing the rebrand. It's, you know, they've been trying to tie up all these big
I would
commercial...
say there was a bigger noise around the rebrand than there was around the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and that went down
like bucket of wet sick,
Yeah,
whatever it's called. Cold sick, that's it. Bucket of cold sick.
It went.
It went. It happened.
It happened. But then they've obviously wrapped up, you know, Sky. They've wrapped up Barclays. We've seen the big British gas energy supply. We've had the wrapping up of the deal with TalkSport as well. We can't say they haven't, the commercial team haven't been bloody busy.
For sure, I wouldn't say that. I would say the Sky and BBC thing happened already before the US thing. And again, it's an existing partnership.
For sure.
So still unbelievable to extend it and to be having so much coverage. But it's not like you were going in cold to someone. And I would also like to think that perhaps those negotiating the British gas deal are a different team to maybe those dealing with broadcast. I could be wrong. Maybe it's all one team doing everything. But again, then that's something you just need to look at. How can
100%.
multiple things be addressed at the same time? And again, it's about prioritizing, isn't it? Like around the content and all of that kind of vibe.
The devil's advocate to that is obviously they've been doing a lot of work around their audience data, trying to find out who's watching, who's tuning in, where their kind of, you know, big growth areas are. The US obviously is one of them, but at the same time, this kind of next gen fan and where their loyalties lie and kind of growing that fan base. And, you know, you were talking then about, you know, how do we appeal to a Gen Z audience? And TikTok is obviously big dog for that. I know nothing about TikTok because I'm too fucking old, but like putting all these, like, you know, the player content out, that does so well for the club channels. I can understand why the WSL football, WPLL, whatever, I've been trying to focus on that to kind of grow that, to be in the best position possibly to negotiate these deals by saying, look, we've already grown our audience from when we took over the FA in last year 2024 to where we are now. Our audience has grown X%, therefore the broadcast rights are now worth X% in the US. That's the only understanding I might have. And also jumping off the back of the success of the Euros, waiting until after that is wrapped up and seeing what the impact of that has on domestic football for the first couple of games to then be in the best negotiating position. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I know.
I'm just
I don't accept
covering all angles.
I don't accept the waiting till after the Euros. That is just an example of being reactive and not proactive. And you have to be proactive in women's football. It is the lesson we're learning all the time, is stop underestimating things that are going to happen, because it proves wrong every single time. I fully understand. Listen, I work in the social media world. I fully understand the desire and need for content. But what people are wanting and expecting from you, your remit is delivering the football for people to watch and to see. You know, you don't have clubs. Clubs aren't able to put their matches on for teams in the US. That is your remit. And it's something I touched on about clubs and this need to have the best content to put out to their audiences and to kind of keep it all in-house. And the WSL is a similar, they want to have all of that kind of content. But if we say, like, I don't know, Premier League, am I looking at the Premier League for like the funnest TikToks from the players, or am I looking to the Premier League for the games that you're putting on? I just think remit-wise, prioritize. And if there's not a huge amount of people in the team, which I understand, and you've not been around for a long time, which I understand, prioritize. I just think that's the main thing, because ultimately it should be about the product on the pitch.
Well, I do definitely think the clubs are prioritising growing the US audiences. Like they've had players come in from across the pond, Naomi Girma, Alyssa Thompson, Emily Fox, Kat Macario, just to name a few. They are also going to create loyal US fan bases coming over to kind of, experience the footballers that have gone across the pond. Obviously, like one of the big talking points at the moment is the kind of the continuing the salary cap with the NWSL.
Jesus, calorie cap.
Calorie cap. Yeah,
hell.
I mean, fucking hell, I could do one of those, to be fair. It's been a very big summer for me. But $3.3 million is the current NWSL salary cap. We obviously have the minimum salary cap in the WSL, but we don't have a maximum at the moment. It'll be interesting to see what London City Lionesses owner Michelle Kang and the impact that her very deep pockets has on the conversations around the salary cap. But it is obviously encouraging maybe players to come across the pond. But I don't think anyone in the WSL is earning anywhere near 3.3 million just on performance alone. Commercial, fine. I reckon Leah Williamson's probably doing well in excess of that. But in terms of the actual, I don't think that's the thing that's encouraging people to come across the pond. But do we think actually it's the quality of football that's driving players to come across the pond and be a part of the WSL and this new rebranded, commercial rights flying all over the place? They've got the broadcast rights now set up. It looks like a promising league that could overtake the NWSL in terms of revenue, audience. It's growing.
Yeah, I think it's about the football. And I think we go through peaks and troughs of where it works the other direction. I think at the moment it's too young to be drawing narratives from the number of players who've come over or not come over. I think we often see an influx of, more often than not, funnily enough, and I don't know whether it's because one goes and then another goes, but, we had a season where we had quite a few Dutch players in the league. Then we had a season where we had quite a few Australian players in the league. Now it seems to be the turn of US players. And, players want to play Champions League football. Like, that's another draw for top quality players. And I think players like to challenge themselves. Top players like to challenge themselves in different leagues to see how they get on because the football is different and the challenges are different. So it's an element of that, but equally I think, it wouldn't be surprising if players go the other direction to experience the NWSL. So I wouldn't draw too many narratives from it yet because I just don't think there's a really clear pattern because of any one particular reason. But it is definitely something to keep an eye on.
What more do you think WSL football can do to grow the league in the US and beyond, really?
I think it's probably learning from matchday experience, learning from the outreach that these clubs do into the communities because they don't have, a men's club to fall back on. I think they're interesting areas that they can delve into. I think ultimately the focus is the football, the product on the pitch. That should be what we're championing first and foremost. And then maybe looking at game day experiences in what they do in the NWSL. I think about merchandise, what they offer over there is huge. People are willing to spend money, 74% more in the women's game on merchandise. Tap into that, be proactive, not reactive.
The hospitality packages are pretty sick as well.
Oh, listen, we got our shirt printed at a ground in the stadium and at halftime they texted us to say it was ready.
Just a flag, I've not actually been invited to do any hospitality this year, so I can only
Game
assume
2.
that I will be watching the games in the stands.
Listen,
which is really sad.
Grascioro had to watch the London City Lionesses game in the stands. I don't know whether it was a have to, but, maybe things are tight, Chloe.
I'm now a poncho-wearing peasant. How much of a fall from grace has that been since last year?
Can you come into the next episode wearing a poncho? So funny.
I might have to, given the rain. Before we go, last week I asked listeners and viewers who support multiple clubs like me to get in touch. We had lots of responses, not all of them agreeing with me, which is bizarre.
Can I just clarify? Because I was only negging you. I wasn't making like an indictment on everybody who supports multiple clubs. I understand that in the women's game. I was just digging at you. But I did get a lot of support.
There's a lot of people who supported my position. I'll tell you that for free. But I'll let you go first.
Let me just
I'm generous.
read some of these.
Go on.
Glow Bryce Stinger on YouTube. Supporting two teams in the same league is bad enough, but both of those teams being in the top 4, ludicrous.
God, that's...
Tim on Instagram, Rachel is 100% spot on. It's just bonkers for anyone to support both Man United and Arsenal. It's unconscionable. I think that was something that really upset people, was the two teams you chose seemed to really get under people's skin. At Tingo on YouTube, one club for me. I can admire players on other teams, but will only support my club, Arsenal.
Oh, no, do you know what? That's a nice one. Tingo, absolutely get your position. Everyone, unconscionable, ludicrous.
Yeah.
I mean, grow up.
It's just that you're a glory hunter, to be fair, or you just like going after the fashion. That's the difference. It was more an indictment on you than anybody else.
You're lucky we're friends. Layla on Instagram, my contingent, my loyal supporters. Yes, grew up supporting Man United men. Dad's a mank. Oh, I mean, that's a bad start, isn't it? Man United supporting Man United men. Layla, come on. So have a very soft spot for the women, but also grew up near Kingsmeadow, so love a bit of Chelsea. Not opposed to going to any game there. Have been to Arsenal lots, for example, because I love watching quality football, and that's what it's about. Quality football.
Yeah, but in there she didn't say, I support all of those teams.
Look, I'm not done yet. Katie on Instagram said, can't help but love all the WSL teams. Me and my little girl love watching as much as we can. I think I'm still buzzing. Women's football is on the actual telly. I love that my daughter is growing up where it's just normal to play football, watch women's football and just talk about the players.
Love that.
That's lovely. We're all in together. We're all trying to go the game. We all want it to go in the same direction. And it doesn't matter who you love, all right?
Sorry, you're speaking to a gay woman telling me it doesn't matter who you love. I'm fully aware of that, but thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, you're right. Damn right. Have a think about that. Love extends across all different protected characteristics.
Wrap it up.
All right.